Thank you for watching this video. Please help us keep the show alive by liking and sharing this video and by subscribing to the show and making sure the notification button is switched on. For those of you who can help a little bit more, there's a Patreon link down below where you can contribute whatever you can. Every little does help, and all the money will go directly back into the show. You can also keep up with our latest content on Instagram at The No Show Pod, as you can see on the screen. As you know, The No Show is an initiative designed to make academic research accessible to everyone. So do contribute to the conversation, leave some questions, have a discussion, and I'll make sure I get back to everyone. So Alan, thank you so much for joining me on The No Show. I'm really pleased to have you join us.
Welcome. Thank you.
So just as a brief introduction of yourself to our audience, can you just give us a little bit of a background of how you got to sort of doing this work on social transformation and water management?
Okay, so, well, last 25 years, I've been involved in water resource management, water supply development through NGOs, think tanks, and others. And a large element of that has been about looking at transboundary waters, so the complex issues around sharing waters between countries or sharing the benefits derived from those waters. So I've worked a lot on the River Nile between Ethiopia, Egypt, Sudan, and other countries. And I've also worked on water supply issues, smallholder farmers. So I've worked on a range of these issues, and in all of these contexts, whether it's the Nile or in the Indus, the Mekong, or wherever, one constant is the fact that nothing is constant. It's always in flux, right? Mm-hmm. Society is changing, political earthquakes, natural disasters. The population pyramids of countries have changed drastically in my lifetime since I've been working in these areas. So the population of Ethiopia, for example, since I began my work there 25 years ago, has doubled, at least doubled. So, that means a whole set of pressures taking place. Employment, people need jobs, social security, health issues, education levels, the fact everyone pretty much has some kind of universal primary education now means that if you are brought up in a farming community with, you're now literate, you're numerate. Do you want to be a farmer? Do your parents want you to be a farmer, right? Quite often they don't. You talk to farmers in East Africa and they'll say, no, I don't really want my children to be doing this same thing I've been doing for the last, 30 years. So there's huge change. Social transformation is a constant. It's a given. Nothing stays the same. And within that context, therefore, managing water or developing water supply, water and sanitation for communities, or building constructive dialogue between countries sharing a resource is always challenging because nothing is staying the same. So being aware of what's going on, being aware of those social transformation issues is critical. Otherwise, you can make assumptions based on the past that don't hold true to any extent, 5 or 10 years later. So, that's probably a call for research, because research is important. You don't know what is happening really unless you do good, strong, methodologically sound research. And so social transformation research is therefore playing a key role in informing decision making. On transboundary issues, again, the fact is that these big systems, whether it's the Nile shared by 11 countries or the Indus by 4, are they're complex, but they're also, because they are shared, they are politically laden environments, right? These are big systems that have huge importance for countries' development, for their food production, energy production in terms of hydropower, for water supply, rural water supply, or whatever. These countries contribute. These countries contribute huge importance. These basins contribute huge importance to countries. So understanding how to improve, optimize, if you like, transboundary relationships and management of that shared system is a key factor in ensuring we can help countries achieve the SDGs, or we can build them into more robust systems able to withstand climate impacts that are coming or are already being felt. So one impact, of course, is flooding. because in some parts of the world you find more intensive rainfall, perhaps shorter duration, but more intense, creating massive runoff in hilly systems, creating enormous flood problems and damage to property and persons. So building systems that are more able to withstand climate extremes is also very important. And that's being, I would say, realized more and more now, that we have to manage these kind of shared systems as one system, not just because everyone needs to benefit, and finding that ratio of benefits and costs and how to share it equitably between countries is not easy, but also to make them more resilient for and against future climate shocks.
Mm-hmm. It's a very interesting sort of strand of your research, this the implication of climate change. How prepared are these countries that rely on these water sources for the rapid change in the climate?
Well, that's a really good question, Hussain. I mean, it varies, yeah. I mean, some countries have put in place what they call low, no regret solutions, where investments are in things that are likely, almost certainly, going to improve storage of water, for example, or managing flood protection for communities, for landscapes. What's often called nature-based solutions now, restoring wetlands, for example, making them more capable of mitigating or alleviating the impacts of flooding. In a sense, that's what wetlands do. They're a large sponge, right? They should be able to suck in excess water and evaporate it off over time, particularly because of all the vegetative matter and the biomass that exists in wetlands, or swamps, to use a colloquial term. So, that's really important. Other countries are much more susceptible to climate change. Maybe they put in place fewer measures, or maybe they have more complex environments in which to manage these resources. There's also a level of unpredictability and uncertainty out there that is hard to overcome, because although climate models tell you, oh, here's Northeast Africa or West Africa, and this is what it tells us, and look at that blue dot where it's going to be raining more in the next 100 years, or there's a red dot where it's going to be drier. That dot itself is maybe hundreds of square kilometers, right? Mm-hmm. What does that translate into at a local level? What does that mean down at the district level government in Awarada in Ethiopia, where they're very concerned about drought or flooding? Or what does that mean in Upper West region in Ghana? That little dot, what they call downscaling that to a useful level where it can be understood by local decision makers and responded to, is one of the major challenges. So that's why there's a big debate now, a big push rather, for climate information, climate services, they call it, so that we can turn that kind of data into useful data that people can make long-term strategic decisions on. And that's going beyond just weather data. It's not just about whether it's going to rain or whatever. It's much more about, in the next 5-10 years, what's going to happen here? How many drought episodes are there going to be? How much more water will there be in extreme rainfall events? That's really difficult. That's tough stuff. That's also tough for scientists to be able to turn into useful nuggets of information that people can respond to and use.
Yeah, that's. I mean, one of the things that comes to mind when based on that is, this to me just sounds like it requires a lot of sharing of information. And I know you mentioned it briefly earlier, that there is an apprehension to share this information or share this knowledge about these shared water resources. What do you think is driving this sort of apprehension? Is it diplomacy? Is it mistrust?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, sharing, knowledge, well, the classic phrase, knowledge is power, right? So something someone else doesn't, what will happen in the future, they don't know. So part of it is holding your cards and your knowledge close to your chest, because you think it gives you an advantage, right? It gives you some kind of edge over someone else, maybe downstream or upstream in a river basin. Or maybe knowledge is, to your mind, it's it's a route to riches, or having the knowledge is a way to get people to come to you for the knowledge, therefore to buy your services. So to some extent, knowledge is a product, it's a commercial entity that can be bought and sold. So if you're the owner of knowledge and you hold on to that knowledge, you're almost you're adding value to that knowledge, in the sense that you then may be able to sell it. So the controversy therein is when is knowledge, private knowledge, obstructing development, when it should be public knowledge that everyone can use. So this is a big issue, as you will know, around the nature of science and scientific papers, right? Open access journals versus those with a firewall that you have to pay, or paywall. So it's a big issue in development now. How much of publicly funded research should be by association publicly accessible? So in other words, published in non-paywalled journals and on other platforms. I mean, I would argue that all publicly funded research should be publicly available, because it's adding to the public good of knowledge out there, which is what we're about, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree. It's just really interesting because in my mind, I think if you're using shared resources, surely the knowledge will be mutually beneficial. But I think one of the really interesting things about your current research that you mentioned to me before this recording was sort of looking at the social transformation that's going on, or that's taking place in Ghana. So talk to us about how you were firstly drawn to this research, and then maybe share some details of it.
In Ghana, one of the things that drew me to the research was that it's a part of Africa, the Upper West, Sahelian Africa, which over the years has been presented as a kind of dry and drought-prone part of the world, but it's also very important ecosystem, a very important part of West Africa, a very large part of West Africa, this sort of Sahelian zone. And it's also part of what they're calling the green belt, they're trying to prevent the growth, in a sense, of the driest parts of the Sahara and other parts of Sahelian Africa, trying to prevent desert encroachment in farming lands. So from my perspective, it's part of what you might call kind of a key margin in Africa between farming, pastoral, and very arid areas of the west central part of the continent. So, and I've spent a lot of time in East Africa, and there are parts of East Africa, Sudan, for example, in a similar place. So from my side, what's fascinating is these are critical zones, you could call them critical margins globally, that are under enormous pressure because of global climate change, and also under enormous pressure because of the impacts of that change on farming systems, and population intersection with climate change has enormous impacts. So very interesting for me, because I'm thinking, okay, well then what can we do when we have knowledge about what's happening? How can we help build resilience? How can we help enable social transformation? It's not just about stopping people from doing things, it's about enabling transformation. So enabling agriculture to move in different directions, enabling people to build livelihoods in different occupations, enabling them to create a more effective response, personal or household level or community response to these situations. And to me, it's part and parcel of why I'm in development, is to help people work through these challenges and come out better on the other side. And that means individuals, households, communities, government, policymakers, private sector, entrepreneurs, whoever it is trying to intervene in these situations.
And I know we spoke about briefly about sort of the case of shea butter and shea butter farming and that sort of stuff. And you mentioned that there's vested interests that, you know, contribute to keeping large parts of these agricultural areas the way they are, because, you know, there's much to be gained there. My question is that something that can be changed?
Is that what, sorry?
Is it something that we can change at any point, or is it just too many powerful players controlling it?
Well, I mean, you know, fair trade and others try and change these systems. Other farmer organizations try and empower farmers to be, you know, not just the growers and harvesters of raw product, but the refiners and manufacturers of materials, of products. You know, shea butter is a critical value chain because it's such a valuable resource, right? In London here, you can walk down to the shopping centre and buy a tub of this stuff, you know, for £4 or £5, £10 even if you get a fancy one. You know, that is the equivalent of maybe, you know, 5 days' wages for someone in Ghana, right? Maybe working in a agricultural wage labor occupation. That's a whole lot of money I'm spending on a tub of shea butter. So, you know, there's a moral, ethical issue, I think, at the end of these value chains. Yeah, we need to think how we can shift the value upstream, or rather downstream to the farmers, and do that in a way that doesn't kill the value chain, doesn't kill the business logic, but it improves. It's the same with coffee. You know, a kilo of coffee ground is 10 times the value of a kilo of raw coffee beans, roasted, let alone raw coffee beans that haven't been roasted, right? The same in Ethiopia. So how do you move the value upstream? And one of the ways of doing that is to create better farmer organizations that can organize themselves to refine and develop their products, to market, to bring to market products that they've actually manufactured themselves. So there's you know, a lot of knowledge globally on this. And from my side, from a water resource management perspective, you know, how can we build their robustness as producers through ensuring their water security? So creating communities of farmers that have a more secure water future in these complex Sahelian zones in West Africa and elsewhere. So, and water security for everyone is critical, but for these farming communities, it's you know, it's a life or death decision in some ways. When they decide to farm in very uncertain climate conditions, how can you help make them more secure? How can you create security, water security?
And is there much that can be done, given that it is so?
Oh, just to add to that point.
Go ahead.
That's to add to that point. So the linking the 2 points together. The one is the water security point, and the other is the kind of value added of farmers and what they do with their crops. So the more the farmer can benefit from the value of producing something and refining it and selling it, the more he or she can then improve income and potential own investment in their systems. So maybe in their water security or other, you know, household level human security issues. So it's kind of virtuous circle we're trying to create.
With regards to the water security, given that climate plays such a big role in it, what other factors are controllable that can be improved?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. The other issues, so you have a like groundwater, you have a resource that is hidden, difficult to understand. It's by its very nature underground. So you have farmers who have the means wherewithal to drill into that groundwater, to lift it through a pump, and to apply it to their fields, right? So farmer X decides to do that, and then farmer Y and Z and everyone else decides to do that, and you start having a decline in the water table that you find in many parts of the world, India, Pakistan, South Asia, certainly. And some farmers have advantages over the others because they can drill deeper because they have more money, and they can pump out faster because they have bigger pumps. So, so essentially you're creating a manufactured scarcity because the water is going down. Some farmers are pumping it out. Those farmers who have shallower wells can't access the water after a while. So they end up by losing capacity to access water for the farmers who can't drill as deep. A lot of farmers will be chasing the water down. They'll continue drilling. Parts of, I remember in Andhra Pradesh, as was, farmers were drilling hundreds of feet and continually drilling and spending an enormous amount of money on drilling. So the farmers that couldn't afford it stopped. So they essentially were then water insecure, right? So it's not just about drought and climate change. It's also about managing or governing access to water and the abstraction of water from groundwater. So building more fairer, more equitable systems for accessing groundwater, managing the resources is critical. What does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It does, and I think that just sort of leads me to like consider the how much of that it relies on having a robust government in those areas, whether it's a local government or a federal government.
Yeah, I mean, a government that also has resources. It's all very well having officials sitting in offices who who write nice plans, but having governments with resources and capacity to use those resources in order to, say, monitor and manage these critical resource reservoirs, whether it's groundwater or surface water. Yeah, I mean, it's very important. It's probably the linchpin of development. I mean, one thing I've found in the last 20-25 years is that good local government is incredibly powerful as a development agent. It's there, it's accessible, it's close to the people. It's to a large extent part of the people. Often local government officials come from that area, not always. They may come from elsewhere, but often they do. So, it's part of the community to some extent, to a greater or lesser extent. And close to the needs of that community. So having good governance, good local government, is very important. And there are many places in Africa and Asia where that's very clear. Whether it's the panchayat, the sarpanches in India, or district development officers in Uganda. I've always found they are an incredible they have an incredible body of knowledge, and they probably are the experts on what's going on in their area. So their level of knowledge is much higher than national level stakeholders, and often higher, higher than anyone else in their localities as well. So when going back to the social transformation research, we're focusing on working with government. They're the people we're really focusing on working with, because building up their knowledge is even more important, because eventually they are those development actors that make a difference, I think.
Where can people find you online and the work that you've been doing?
Well, it's all on our website, on the IWMI website. IWMI is part of the Consultative Group on International Agricultural Research, IWMI CGIAR. The International Water Management Institute is one of the 15 centers. And you can find on our website, if you Google it, Safari it or Firefox it, I should say, you can find it. Yeah, you can find it. It's there, and you can put in social transformation in Ghana, and you'll find work we're doing there. You can find work on the Indus Basin Knowledge Portal I mentioned, and you can find work on our other projects as well. So I head up the Water Growth and Inclusion Group, where we do work in East Asia as well as South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, and indeed in the Middle East region, Middle East and North Africa. So you'll find a range of our work online.
Are you on Twitter by any chance?
Yeah, I am on Twitter, yeah. So
if you just send me over
my Twitter handle.
Yes, please, yeah. Because I'll link it onto the episode so people can get direct access to it.
Yeah, it's at Alan_Nicol. So my name with the underscore in the middle.
Excellent. Well, Alan, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. It's really been beneficial to me to sort of get an insight into water resource management, and I'm sure my audience would agree with me that it's something that needs more coverage.
Thank you very much, Hussain. I'm really looking forward to seeing the result.
Excellent. Thank you for watching this video. Please help us keep the show alive by liking and sharing this video, and by subscribing to the show and making sure the notification button is switched on. For those of you who can help a little bit more, there's a Patreon link down below where you can contribute whatever you can. Every little does help, and all the money will go directly back into the show. You can also keep up with our latest content on Instagram at The No Show Pod, as you can see on the screen. As you know, The No Show is an initiative designed to make academic research accessible to everyone. So do contribute to the conversation, leave some questions, have a discussion, and I'll make sure I get back to everyone.